VUCA, V-U-C-A, VUCA. This word has been used or is being used quite a lot in recent times. But even before the current situation impacted us, this word VUCA has been used in conference rooms, in meetings, in seminars, in lectures, in leadership programs, and also in social circles. I wouldn't be surprised if someone starts using the word VUCA to define the relationship status as well. So it's not something that is new, but it's something that has found a lot of importance in today's world. Let's listen to it from a slightly different perspective from somebody who's not just an expert on the theory part of VUCA, but has actually lived VUCA-like situations all his life. He's helped individuals and organizations come out of VUCA-like situations as well. So we have with us Balaji, who's a hands-on expert in VUCA-like situations. And he'll share with us what mindsets and preparedness do we need to have to handle VUCA-like situations. So Balaji, an absolute pleasure having you part of a little show today. And let's just, get right to the word VUCA itself. And as someone who's handled a lot of VUCA situations all your life, it'll be great to hear from you the very origin of this word VUCA. Can you just throw some light on that, please?
Hi, Afeef. At the outset, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to your wonderful show. I am a keen viewer of it, and I'm truly telling you, I learn a lot from it. So thank you and greetings of the day.
Thank you so much for that.
Afeef, it's a very strange thing that in 1987, it was the heights of the Cold War, the US and the erstwhile Soviet Union being the two mighty powers of the world, superpowers of the world, and the entire world was divided into a bipolar setup with a very few nations like India being part of the non-aligned movement. And right in 1987, they envisaged a situation where the Cold War would end and the world would be thrown into turmoil because it being unipolar in nature now. And hence, there would be a VUCA-like situation.
What is something that you would want people who are managing these situations, be it in their homes or be it in their offices, be it at a government level? What is something that you'd want them to be a little mindful of?
More and more people have started talking about VUCA, first in the world military leadership levels. And now you see a lot of preponderance of VUCA knowledge by strategic leadership. By strategic leadership, I mean by the heads of organizations, by the heads of countries, by the heads of major institutions like FICCI or SEBI. And there's a very important lesson that we can derive. These VUCA lessons that are generally talked about at the strategic level, they, in order to be effective on ground, lessons learned from them or whatever we cull out of them need to flow down to the tactical level too. I understand I'm using military terminology, but strategy, as we know, is more concerned with the broad direction of the organization of the business house. And tactical handling is something more of a hands-on thing as to what are the on-ground changes that we might have to make as far as our daily dealings and daily operations go.
So one area that comes in, no matter what kind of processes and systems you put in, I think the human element plays a significant role here. You might have the best systems and the best, procedures and technologies to make sure that we are able to handle situations that we haven't faced earlier. But why is it that at a human level is where we find a lot of focus that it eventually comes down to? And we also see that there's a lot of unpreparedness in being able to handle these situations.
As you rightly brought out, Afeef, the human element is something that we cannot do without. Technology is always there, infrastructure and such kind of things are always there. However, the human element is, I would rather rate it at the highest priority. And at the human level, we need to be better prepared to deal with emergencies. We need to be aware of, firstly, how do VUCA-like situations affect individuals? You see, there is a lot of uncertainty being faced by people.
Right.
There is a lot of nervousness. There is a lot of changing of priorities that people have undergone in this period of lockdown or in this period of business slowdown, where
Right.
businesses have now stripped themselves down to what exactly are the essentials to have the business running.
Hmm.
The change in priorities may be personal in nature, social or societal in nature, where we as individuals, we as leaders, we as organizational heads, we as CEOs or CFOs have now changed our priorities. There is a whole load of uncertainty about the immediate future. May not be a long-term thing, but yes, about the immediate or the middle future. We are talking about the next 6 months, we are talking about the next 1 year, we are talking about the next 5 years. Where an organization would go, where would see ourselves 5 years from now, there is a kind of fog that is on. And my friends in the military normally would call it the fog of war. Fog of war is a condition that generally happens. These are based on studies on World War I, World War II, wars fought all over the world by different nations. What essentially happens is, despite your plan going as what you had envisaged, firstly, yes, the adage goes, the first casualty of a war is a plan. However, even despite your actions happening as per your plan, there is a tremendous amount of lack of communication, which leads to a kind of fog, information fog, where you actually do not know the outcome of your action. You actually do not know if various different parts of your organization are working optimally or are facing issues. There is essentially a breakdown in communication.
Okay.
And that's what's happening today. This is also caused because of rumors, because of lack of a proper structured framework of emergency communication. Corporate communication is a normal thing that keeps happening. However, corporations today need to decide what is going to be their emergency communication measures. What are the changes that they're going to bring about in case of an emergency? If we need to succeed in an emergency, we need to envisage a worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario can be anything. It can be an economic downfall. It can be the breakdown of a bank. It can be an earthquake. It can be natural calamities. It can be theft. It can be embezzlement. It can be a change in government policies. We need to be better prepared for periods of isolation, whether it is of a personal nature as it's happening now, or maybe even as a business. There may be conditions where your business is isolated. We need to develop that kind of mental strength and adaptability that comes out from proper planning and research. And we need to inculcate or develop a thought process that is more aligned with dealing or quick adaptability to emergencies.
So, great thoughts again, and it sort of takes me back to the, to the human element that we're just talking about, where the lack of knowing what to do, right? So, if I can just call it, some kind of a muscle memory kind of a thing, right, where you're able to
Yeah.
recall what I need to do when I'm faced with a certain situation, right? What does my family need to do? What does my coworker need to do? Situations are unpredictable. Situations happen. We have no control over, how things will really shape up. As things stand today, we're not sure what half an hour or half a day from now actually presents. What happens in schools? What happens in corporates? Why is it that we don't really have a lot of seriousness in simulating some of these situations and taking people through some real-time scenarios? Do you think that would be something that schools and colleges and families, housing complexes, and of course corporates can look at? We see a lot of people doing self-defense training after they've been a lot of attack on women, for example, right? And we get a lot someone from the armed forces or someone who's a martial artist to come and teach them some fundamentals of. So now you're a lot more prepared. At least you're a little more confident that when you hear someone's footsteps in a dark alley, at least 2-3 things that can help you maintain composure and take some action. So do we need to wait for a calamity? as a learning from this in terms of how can we start preparing human beings to handle these kind of situations?
The emergency that we train for may not be the same emergency that we face. However, what we've done is we've trained our mind to quickly respond. This can be developed right from something as inane yet extremely important, like fire
Right.
drills in schools, fire drills in offices. Like in Japan, they regularly have they regularly have these drills for earthquakes,
Right.
where people who are trapped practice getting under desks. People they know how to go immediately go and search for an archway and stand under it, or evacuate the building in a quick manner using the emergency exits. Also, I'll encourage parents to have a word with your children if in case there's an emergency at home, there's a fire at home, there's an earthquake at home, or there may be something as grave as maybe as we in India like to call dacoities at home. There's a strange person who suddenly enters with a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So what, of course, we will try and face it, but what can we do to keep us safe? We need to wargame these scenarios and practice it. At a child's level, it may be a game. However, these games in turn act as major lessons for the child and get imprinted in the child's motor memory on how to react in an emergency. Same is the case for adults.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I know of certain organizations whom I would not like to name for obvious reasons, but which practice terrorist drills. I don't mean the armed forces.
Right. Right.
I mean there are corporate houses where people actively practice for terrorist drills. That if in case there is some kind of a standoff attack or a suicide terrorist attack that unfortunately in today's world is happening all over, or for example in the US, where you have a whole load of shooter scenarios in school, in colleges, in universities.
Right.
And an active shooter is a very, very dangerous and a blood curling thing, which can actually freeze a child, freeze even a teacher,
right,
or the management, and they actively practice for it. Such kind of practices will help our brains get not only attuned to reaction, but at the same time, they'll help our alertness levels. Most of the casualties that you see in natural disasters happen because of lack of alertness. In fact, we almost rate it as 40% of the initial casualties happen because people weren't alert. Because we have to realize that surprise is with the person causing the calamity, if that is person induced, or with Mother Nature if it is nature induced,
right,
or with whatever it may be. So the element of surprise rests with them. What we only are left with is our quickness of reaction.
Great, great. And I think that's so very well put, Balaji. And I was sort of trying to correlate that with how the whole muscle memory actually works. And like you rightly mentioned, when the brain is taken through certain instances, which goes beyond understanding case studies, that like what we do in a lot of the corporate training programs, right, and learning workshops. We just give them case studies after case studies and expect them to handle situation. But I really believe that taking yourself through some kind of an actual process or an actual simulation, a hands-on simulation, would strengthen your overall ability to handle these situations. On the note of fire drill, I still recall the time when we had the alarm in one of the organizations that I worked for. So we heard the fire alarm and we knew it's a drill, and a lot of us were just cracking jokes as we came down the staircase. Yeah. But in one of the another country where we had we heard a fire drill, and I saw the absolute level of dedication, seriousness, and collaboration, making sure everybody knows what to do, a very, very well defined protocol in terms of how it should be done. I was amazed that nothing really happened, but the seriousness that people took in following that simulated exercise Of course, when I asked some of them, they said this is something that is taught to them at school, and like you rightly mentioned, being prepared. And I think a lot of countries will really have to, sort of simulate economic, crisis, or natural disasters or medical emergencies, shortage of food, just playing ourselves through, through the hands of disastrous simulated environments, just to see what happens, right? And I know, you work with people, departments, organizations, in helping them being a lot more agile, a lot more adaptable. Can you share some examples in the recent past with some of something that you've observed and seen? We've had a lot of instances of how businesses have made some changes. I've moved a lot of people that I consult, through, let's say, the online platform, right? But it'll be great to hear from you on some of the things that people have done already and being able to adapt, keeping the future in mind. Of course, looking at the current situation and handling it at the same time, looking at what the future also holds, right? So can you just share a few such instances, Balaji, with people that you work so closely with?
Sure. In fact, this crisis has brought out a whole load of lessons for us, which are amazing. I am talking from just the India perspective. Let's start out with my favorite people from the armed forces. The Indian armed forces have shown an unbelievably quick response to this crisis without waiting for central government orders on the subject of maybe a lockdown or whatever. On their own, by reading or by just watching what's happening all around the world, the armed forces have kind of realigned themselves without losing sight of their primary task. Our borders are being manned. Our national security is not at stake. However, at the same time, we have amazing responses, like, for example, the IAF. Before most of the countries of the world reacted, the IAF was ready with its aircraft to evacuate our people who were stranded in countries like China or Japan or Korea, and get them back to India. The Indian Navy was already prepared with its response. The Indian Army had, I believe, a whole load of, 8 or 9 quarantine centers that were set up. If you remember, Afeef, all over the world, the media was amazed at how China could set up a 1,000-bed hospital in a span of 4 days. And we got to see the same thing done. I think a 15 or an 1,800-bed facility being created by the Indian Army overnight.
Wow, I didn't know this.
This is a fact. It happened overnight. As we're aware, it's not the Army's primary responsibility to create hospitals, but it's probably the result of the number of contingencies that the armed forces have faced, ranging from earthquakes to floods to fires, to also organizing mass events at the drop of a hat. Or even, for example, handling riots, which no army is actually trained for. So on similar lines, but I'm forgetting the armed forces, you see government research organizations like, for example, the DRDO, which essentially deals with research on defense and defense applications, how they've changed or rather realigned it, existing technologies and developing technologies towards this. The tech that they were using for making glue that is used in submarines, they found that it is a very effective thing in using for sealing PPEs, the stitching of PPEs.
Suits, wow.
Yeah, PPE suits. They started using, because see, we understand that China is the manufacturing hub of the world, and the entire world depended on China for components or micro components. However, because of this crisis, when the industry saw the source of these components running dry, there was an urgent need to innovate. So scientists who are dealing with cutting edge research decided to apply that research on making of filters for masks, N95 or N99 masks, And now, quickly, the technology has been transferred free of charge to Indian local manufacturers so that such micro components can be made. And we are quickly getting there in the number of PPE sets that are required. India is almost there. Ventilator technology. Because of the heavy demand of ventilators and because ventilators are such complex in nature, we've had some of these labs develop ventilators that essentially are meant for COVID and just need those particular functions that a COVID patient may require. Technology that's used in fighter planes. Oxygen regeneration. Hospitals need not wait in view of supply chains being disrupted and oxygen cylinders being a high priority item. Such kind of small kits can exist in hospitals where they quickly regenerate oxygen and patients are saved. We are talking about saving lives here. It's a huge calamity that we are facing.
At the armed forces, if you look at a lot of people who are facing, who've gone through these practices, they find it a lot easier to adapt. And if you're if you have a mindset of looking at what next instead of looking at why me, right? If you look at having a different approach towards things, then it's a lot easier for you to get your feet moving, and and you get a little more aware and mindful of where you are and what you can create from this step forward.
The first thing being maintaining composure. That's kind of the first casualty that happens in case of a crisis. We lose our composure, and as a result, we lose our ability to react or to think.
Right.
So first and foremost, I feel what I would advise all our viewers is please maintain composure. Please have a regulated lifestyle. Even if the heavens come crashing down, a regulated lifestyle will help in us maintaining our sanity levels. Always look at a crisis as an opportunity to become a better individual, an opportunity to become, to learn more, and an opportunity, for example, to spend more quality time with our families. The kind of time we get with our families now is something that we could never have envisaged before retirement. And I would always suggest that try and take out whatever we can at the maximum out of this. Like, for example, I've been collaborating with friends of mine whom I couldn't because of work reasons, my martial art friends, and we are having online Tai Chi sessions for almost 45 minutes a day. And this has actually helped us recharge us. Look for inspirations, people that would inspire you on a daily basis. The other day, like for example, I saw a postman who came to my office to deliver some important documents during this lockdown. And I knew that he was a single father. With schools not functioning, his child is alone at home. And when I asked him, how come you're working? He said, "Sir, the first thing is I cannot take leave because otherwise who'd work? It's an essential service that I have to do. So all I do is I cook, I keep my food ready. I've told my kid not to go out of the house. My kid takes food. And when I get back, I first have a bath and then I meet him." And such kind of people inspire you to be a better individual, and also they teach you dedication towards your work, towards your job, towards your life, and towards your family. So that's all I would like to tell people. And thanks a ton for having me over, Afeef. This is a great opportunity you gave me.
So thank you so much for being part of it, Balaji. Great insights, and hopefully we get to hear more inputs from you as we go forward. Right?
Definitely.
Great.
Bye bye.
Thank you.